Bobby Griffith died at the age of 20. He didn't have a disease. He wasn't involved in gang violence or drugs. Bobby Griffith killed himself because he was gay. Bobby Griffith's mother is a good woman. She didn't mean for her son to die so tragically, but like so many others, she allowed herself to believe the bigotry that led to her young son's death. Love and support your gay and lesbian children. That's what Mary Griffith would do if only she and Bobby could start over.
Welcome back to a one-hour special edition of the Gay News Network. I'm Jane Troxell, owner of Lammas Women's Bookstore. Next, the world will never be the same. Let's meet historian Dell Richards, author of 12 Lesbians Who Changed the World.
In the foreword of your book, you said you would not be a published writer if you were still a heterosexual. Now that you identify yourself as a gay woman, how has that discovery changed your life's work?
Well, other than the fact that I'm probably a professional queer, and that I completely write about gay women and gay things, I think the really important thing for me is that self-esteem issues are really difficult for heterosexual women. And I think in addition to all the sexism that you have as a woman, you know, if you're heterosexual, your self-esteem is constantly battered down, not only in the outside world, in your job and in your social life, but in your personal life too. It's such a struggle that I think you're able to create a much higher level of self-esteem as a gay woman, even though you have to deal with homophobia. And so I really think it's helped me become a stronger person and a more sure person of myself, and as my, you know, of myself as a writer also.
Is there one quality these women share? And what criteria did you use in selecting them for inclusion in your book?
They were all incredibly strong, and pretty much they were all kind of troublemakers in the sense that they believed in something and they were determined to do it. And they were quite willing to ruffle feathers and, you know, fight to do what they wanted. Even Florence Nightingale, who had to fight with her family for 15 years. In the Lytton Strachey's biography of her, the gay historian, he says that her wanting to become a nurse was if I wanted to be a kitchen maid. I mean, her family was just furious. They couldn't believe she would want to do this because it was so beneath her social class in the day, and nurses were seen so differently.
I'd like to quote now from your book. In 1809, a young man entered Edinburgh University as a med student. He was really young, barely a teen. Plus, he was frail and effete, but no one thought anything of it at the time. In 1865, he died during a particularly bad summer flu caused by London's open sewers. He left no heirs, no family. When the woman preparing the body for burial took off his clothes, she discovered he was a woman. Who was she, and why did you choose to write about her?
Oh, I chose James Miranda Barry because she is part of the cross-dressing tradition that has been part of lesbianism for, from about 1500 to well into the 20th century. It was a stage that women went through. It not only gave them economic freedom, they could, you know, do a lot more jobs, especially if they were poor to start with. They could vote, they could own property if they could raise enough money. But also it was a step psychologically to thinking of themselves as being gay. They used to think that if they loved women, then they must be a man inside, that they were a man trapped in a woman's body. And it's only later in the 20th century that we don't think that if we're gay.
Well, you bring up an interesting point too, is that women had so few economic choices that they were, it was not like, well, let's go and do this. It was a survival issue.
Oh yes, especially for James Miranda Barry. She would have ended up as a prostitute, or a servant. Those were her two choices. And she was really lucky that her uncle, we think it's her uncle, was an artist with patrons who, when her uncle died, they decided to take the money they had raised for him and, give it to her so that she could go to med school and to try this grand experiment in women's education. Because she was the first woman to go to college and to become a doctor in England. And she had to do it by passing as a man.
Plus, she was 17 when she graduated initially.
Yes.
She was a genius.
Yes, yes, very much so.
How did you document that these women were actually gay?
I'm not using the same criteria that we use today. I do not use the fact that they had sex. that is something we cannot prove and we simply cannot know. But I was able to find articles about them, talking about them. Jane Addams and Lillian Wald, there was a specific article written about them and their love life. Sometimes in the biographies it's very clear. In Florence Nightingale's biography, she said that she loved her aunt more than she would ever love anyone. And she was just very upfront about that, you know. So you have to pick little clues, though, because none of it's spelled out.
Surely your book will generate great interest in the gay community. How do you think it will appeal to a wider audience?
Well, I picked icons, I mean really icons of modern culture. Jane Addams and Florence Nightingale particularly are very well-known women. I did that because I thought they were very important role models. Later I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I'm going to get trashed. You know, it'll be interesting to see how the mainstream society reacts to this book, if they react at all.
Well, I wondered how you came up with the title, 12 Lesbians Who Changed the World. Why not 12 Women Who Changed the World?
I wanted lesbian right in the title. I wanted that there. I wanted it to be very upfront. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Dell, for joining us. Your book is fascinating. I hope everyone will pick it up and read it.
Oh, thank you. I hope they will too.
If you're planning on taking a vacation soon, whether you're headed to the Caribbean, Palm Springs, or other warm weather destinations, be sure to consult the Out and About Gay Travel Guide. David Alport and Billy Kolber Stewart wrote the book, a sophisticated, knowing, witty, and fun look at the gay popular and gay specific travel destinations for men and women.
The Out and About Gay Travel Guides are a new gay travel guidebook series from Hyperion Press. And our first book, which is out, is USA Resorts and Warm Weather Vacations. We released it in the cold winter because it highlights all sorts of warm weather destinations, although it also includes seasonal summer destinations like Provincetown and Fire Island and Rehoboth and Ogunquit and Saugatuck, but it's concentrated in places like the Caribbean and Hawaii and Florida and the Southern California coast. So it's full of great vacation ideas for people who are looking to escape the winter and looking to go someplace gay in the summer.
Now, what made you all think to do this book? You know, there's a lot of travel books already out there, but this one specifically hones in on the gay community, and why do you find that to be important when, you know, gays are traveling?
Well, the first thing that we discovered was that we liked to travel, and then as we were growing up, we both discovered that we were gay, and then we took jobs at American Express, and what we realized as we became travel professionals was that there really wasn't a lot of good information, objective, critical information for gay and lesbian travelers. We met one another and decided that we would start this business, the newsletter of Out and About, which we started about 4.5 years ago, and we found a big audience for it. We have close to 10,000 subscribers who get the newsletter every month, and the book was a natural outgrowth of that.
Well, what GNN would definitely like to know is, what is the hot spot right now? Where is it that everybody wants to go?
It's funny because in putting together the book, there are some obvious hot spots, like for winter vacation, certainly South Beach, Florida remains the #1 gay, exciting, talked about destination. But South Beach isn't necessarily the best vacation idea for a lot of people. We often write that South Beach is like the Undergear catalog come to life. And for some people, that's a great vacation, and for some people, that's very intimidating.
And what the book really helps a gay lesbian traveler do is figure out which kind of vacation is right for them. We go to places like Key West and Provincetown and Palm Springs, where there are usually 30, 40, even 50 gay guest houses, and we'll tell you which one is right for you.
A unique thing that we've done since we started Out and About was rating the mainstream airlines, hotel companies, and cruise companies based on how gay-friendly their policies towards their employees and customers were.
Because I'm sure, as you know, sometimes it gets very uncomfortable. I certainly have gone on a lot of different vacations, and I will call prior to a hotel and say, you know, I'd like a bottle of wine in the room, and as I come into the room and they notice that there's 2 women, sometimes I feel a little scared, a little intimidated. And does your book also fill in on some of those, you know, like more personal issues?
Yeah. I mean, the book is full of practical travel advice to do just that kind of thing, to smooth the process of checking into a hotel, managing your frequent flyer miles, you know, all sorts of the kind of things that are special needs just for gay and lesbian travelers, because it's all about having a great vacation, and that's what the book is sort of there to help you do.
Well, why is this book different than other travel books that are already out there?
I think the biggest difference is in the perspective that we bring to gay travel. I mean, not only does it reflect our opinions, but in the 4.5 years we've been running Out and About, we've gotten lots of feedback and creative suggestions from our subscribers, nearly 10,000 subscribers, who send us information and hints about places and their perspective on places we've written about. And we've been able to use that to create a guidebook that really describes what's going on at destinations and what it's really like to go on a gay cruise, or what Palm Springs is really all about and what there is to do there and what a vacation there sort of feels like. And by providing that kind of information, it's a much better guidebook for people who aren't necessarily sure about what they want to do or want to investigate new options but want to feel more confident about booking them than they might without the kind of information we provide.
Okay, now is this book mainly geared towards gay men, or are there a lot of information about where lesbians can travel as well in this book?
The book is written for both gay men and lesbians. The reality of the sort of gay-specific travel industry is that it has long been the province of gay male travel opportunities, but that's changing, and there are more and more women's guest houses and more women's circuit parties and tour operators, and we're trying to cover as much of that as we can. There's no city that we cover that doesn't have all of the lesbian stuff as well.
Well, guys, I can tell you what, when I'm ready to travel, this is what I'm picking up right here. I can't wait. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Dr. Sievert Koop. If you are a homosexual man, you are at high risk of contracting hepatitis A highly contagious and debilitating liver disease that can last for months. Travelers to developing countries can be infected through contaminated food and water. For homosexual men, the disease can be sexually transmitted. There's no cure, but now there's a vaccine to prevent hepatitis A. If you're a homosexual man, see your doctor. Get vaccinated.
Call 1-800-VAX-9585.
Rubber,
raincoat,
sombrero,
pocket pouch,
umbrella,
preservatif, Pepperducky,
condongo, Jimmy,
life jacket,
sleeve,
prophylactic,
camisinhas, foamy hood, cover,
gumi,
preservativo,
love glove,
condom. It doesn't matter what you call it. Wear it. This condom reminder has been brought to you by the AIDS program of Whitman Walker Clinic and this station.
One of the most tragic things that happens in our world today is teen suicide. Gay and lesbian lives lost to suicide have increased at an alarming rate when compared to that of heterosexual peers, according to the state of Maryland's Interagency Working Group on Youth Suicide Prevention.
One innocent face behind the sobering statistic belonged to Bobby Griffith. His mother, Mary, co-wrote a book with Leroy Aarons called Prayers for Bobby. In it, she tells the story of the mistakes made by a mother who refused to accept her gay son. As a result of her own personal ordeal, Mary Griffith's heartfelt words guarantee that Bobby's legacy is one that brings life and hope to other gay youth.
Bobby, growing up, was very happy, very carefree. He was really a good little boy. He didn't really make any waves. At one point in his life, I believe he was probably 8 years old, I said, Bobby, I wish I had 50 more like you, because he was never a problem child, a real joy. I might add, I can still say that today. I wish I had 50 more like him, and I know that he's gay. So.
Did you ever realize that Bobby was different when he was growing up?
I did. He was very different, and probably because of his older brother Ed. Ed was really very roughhouse in that, and Bobby was very gentle, very quiet. However, he did play with the other kids in the neighborhood. He tried to keep up with them anyway, but he was very quiet, very gentle. He was different than my other kids, even my girls. So.
Tell us about the first time Bobby talked to you about his homosexuality. Were you the first person that he actually came out to, or in the family, or?
No, he came out to his brother Ed, who was a few months, well, a year or so older, and explained to Eddie about his situation, and of course insisted that Ed not tell anyone, which Ed didn't until Bobby had tried to haphazardly take his life with, I believe it was some buffering. And that's when Ed decided after 3 months that he should come and talk to us and let us know about what Bobby was dealing with.
As each of us
copes with different things. How did you cope with the fact that your son was gay, with the realization? And also, how did Bobby cope with the fact that you weren't really willing to validate that part of his being? Did he ever turn to drugs or alcohol as today so many youths do? Or?
When we first learned about Bobby, we talked it over with Bobby, and we were all pretty much agreed that God was going to come to Bobby's rescue and heal him, and Bobby was in that frame of mind. My husband thought Bobby would grow out of it, but Bobby never did get into drugs or alcohol. He was very health conscious. He would have a beer or two when he went out as he got older, 18, 19. But no, Bobby never did turn to drugs, and I believe he was probably almost 18 when he decided that he would try to accept himself as a gay man. And of course I was still praying for God to heal him. But I believe Bobby was probably almost 18 when he decided that he would try to accept himself.
So if I understand you correctly, the way that you actually coped was through religion. That was your greatest source of strength.
Yes, it was through the fact that if it, at that point in my life, it was an abomination to God, so there was no doubt that God would come to Bobby's rescue and heal him through prayer and counseling. And that's what I expected right up until Bobby died.
I think it'd be interesting, Mary, to ask you how you went from Bible thumping to becoming a gay rights activist. How did that go? How did your husband, how did the rest of your family take that?
When Bobby died and he had not been cured, as I so strongly felt that he was going to be, that's when all the questions began. And as I grew and learned about human sexuality, so did my family, and so did my husband. Bobby's brother Joy, Ed and Nancy, and of course my husband as well. Every time I went to a parents' flag meeting, I learned more and more. And I read books, which I wouldn't have done before, because that would have been from Satan.
Roy, let me ask you now. This seems like an intensely personal story from Mary. How did you actually first learn of Bobby Griffith's story?
I became aware of it in 1989. After Bobby's death, Mary began to re-examine all of her beliefs and gradually became more and more active in behalf of gay causes. And in 1989, the story began appearing in the local newspapers. I worked as an executive editor of the Oakland Tribune at the time in Northern California. And I saw what I thought was this remarkable story, which had excerpts from a diary that Bobby had kept in the last few years of his life. And at the same time, this message from his mother, who had been transformed through the jolt of this loss to an activist for gay causes. It just seemed like an extraordinary story for me as a gay man myself, who had spent most of his life coping with the same kind of self-hatred that Bobby could not get past his teen years with. And so that's how I got interested.
Sure. And actually, you bring up a good point, Mary. If you'd want to just mention that also briefly. I know the story of the very first time you went to the PFLAG meeting, and then eventually you wound up in the gay Pride parade yourself. You want to tell us a little bit about that, what you were feeling, and what you thought of as you walked down the avenue?
Well, I think I missed a few of the parades because I really didn't feel right going. It was a guilt trip. In other words, I felt really guilty that I hadn't been there when Bobby really needed me to be there. And then as the parents began to help me to understand what this parade is all about, parents are out there for these kids whose parents can't be there or won't be there. And that put a really different light on it for me, that I can be there today for Bobby and for all the other kids whose parents can't be there. And it is really, it's hard to even put that experience into words, to know that there's parents out there who are there for all of these kids. I mean, they could be all of our children. And I think that really helps them to get through another day, knowing that PFLAG is out there and all the other organizations too.
For me, this story has a personal side. When I first moved to Washington, D.C. and learned of Mary and Bobby's story, I was so affected by what I saw and the tragedy that could have easily been avoided by true compassion, acceptance, and love, rather than religious intolerance, that I took it as a call to action. That's when I created the Gay News Network. I hope that our story has touched some of you out there in the very same way.
Next up, GNN reporter Randy Legersky, in the first in his series of reviews, will tell us about some of his favorite books recently out in print.
Serving in Silence documents the life of U.S. Army Colonel Marguerite Kammermeyer and her discharge from the service after having revealed she was a lesbian during a routine interview for top security clearance. The debate went all the way to the presidency. Serving in Silence is a book about the true bravery and honor of living an open life at the risk of losing everything you hold close. Go. The most recent book by Linnea Dew is Joining the Tribe, Growing Up Gay in the 90s. Dew examines what it's like for teenagers to grow up gay, lesbian, and bisexual in the 90s and finds out things haven't changed much. She feels the adult gay community should do what they can to help the gay youth of today. She goes on to challenge the assumptions of both straight and gay adults and offers alternatives to the current direction of public debate about teenage sexuality. Linnea Dew also has an article on gay youth reprinted in the debut issue of XY magazine. XY is a new magazine for the gay teen market and has stirred up some controversy by printing underage on the cover. But XY really fills a void for gay and lesbian teenagers who are bombarded with heterosexist media more than any other group. The magazine reveals the latest fashions, reviews art and music, and has departments on technology, sports, health, and commentary. A very solid first issue. See you next time on Randy's Rave Reviews.
Next, the Gay News Network takes a walk on the dark side with ANDREA Weiss and her book Vampires and Violets, the portrayal of gay women in cinema.
Certainly the ways that lesbians have been portrayed in films have changed through the years from their very first portrayals. Can you describe that evolution?
Well, it's an evolution, but it's not a sort of direct linear progression. Basically, I think before the Motion Picture Code went into effect in 1934, there were quite a few lesbian portrayals, some quite overt, some more kind of subtextual or hidden. And then basically the possibility of portraying lesbianism in film was suppressed from 1934 until about the mid-60s, although some images emerged anyway. They were never usually named really as lesbian, but they still existed. And then, of course, since that time, there's been, I mean, although still, you know, compared to images of heterosexual women, very, very few, still a great increase of images of lesbians in the last, you know, 2 decades, 2.5 decades.
In the title of your book, which are Violets and Vampires, explain that.
Okay, well, I chose vampires for the title and actually devoted a whole chapter in my book on lesbian vampire because outside of male pornography, that's where we find the most images of lesbians, you know, as vampires, literally, and that's something that cuts across time periods, countries, you know, just it's a theme, it's a genre virtually, the lesbian vampire genre, because there have been so many. And I chose it for the title because, in a way, it's the most extreme image, it's the most obvious, and it's the most prolific, and you could say negative, although in my book I sort of redeem the lesbian vampire. I mean, I don't think it's completely negative. But anyway, it's something, it's a way that lesbians have been historically portrayed across time. And I put that idea together with violets because violets, as Marlene Dietrich has pointed out in the 20s, and many others have also talked about, is a sign between women of lesbianism. So I wanted to take kind of the most extreme with the kind of most subtle. And violets is also an image that's appeared through over different decades and even centuries in different countries, and it's just this kind of resilient image that keeps emerging of a kind of coded or secret sign between women. So it's the most subtle, whereas vampires is the most extreme.
What movies do you think most accurately and honestly portray lesbians? I mean, you've seen them all.
Well, I have to say, before sort of preface my answer with saying that I have a problem with the idea of accurate, because I think one thing I tried to convey in my book is that films do not give an accurate representation of reality. They're not a reflection of reality, nor do they really attempt to be. That aside, in terms of what films I think offer a more, well, at least a more satisfying image for lesbian audiences, perhaps. I wrote a chapter in the book on the importance of Dietrich and Garbo and Hepburn in the 30s for lesbian spectators. And I think that Marlene Dietrich's performance in Morocco can easily be read as a lesbian film. Then, of course, there are more recent films, and you know, there's a film from 1974, Daughters of Darkness, with a lesbian vampire, who's the most attractive character in the film, and she's just wonderful. And these, you know, there are a number of images like that. I mean, just sort of throughout.
Mm-hmm. From lesbian vampires to creatures from the gay imagination, GNN walks on the dark side. Last but not least, we'll hear from the man that Stephen King called the future of horror, novelist Clive Barker. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your new book, Sacrament?
Sacrament is a kind of psychological thriller with supernatural elements about a wildlife photographer, a gay man called Will Rab Johns, an Englishman who's transplanted himself to the West Coast, as I did. So there's a little autobiographical stuff in there. And Will is the most celebrated wildlife photographer on the planet. That's what the book suggests. And his genius comes in the fact that he has been able to photograph creatures on the verge of extinction. And at the beginning of the book, he gets very badly mauled by a polar bear. And in his coma, after this mauling, returns to his childhood and remembers a kind of primal confrontation he had with these two villains, the villains of the piece, who are a husband and wife team. I always knew if I was going to write about Will in this book, he was always going to be gay. I have an audience that's very well established, gay and straight, through 14 books that precede this book. An audience which, as Deacon said earlier on when we were talking about it, is very open-minded. It's an audience that's very used to the strange and the offbeat, and an audience which is very open-hearted, I think. I've been signing in gay bookstores for the last 6 or 7 years. I've done a lot of gay press here and in Europe. It's never really been an issue. I've been writing about gay characters from the first Books of Blood, which is now 12 years ago. Sometimes you get a negative review or two. A few Midwestern reviewers went after the homoerotic stuff and the sadomasochistic stuff in that and said, you know, Barker's a pervert and should be taken out and shot.
What are your feelings on the directions that the Hellraiser movie series has taken after you washed your hands of it?
Oh, this interview was going so well, Joe.
I had to.
You know, sequel after sequel being made from the Hellraiser movies now, sequel after sequel being made of the Candyman movies. I think at a certain point you should just leave the thing alone, but I don't have any power over it.
You would never consider going in and trying to fix things and ending it or something?
I've tried to do that, but I have no power, you know? In the first movie was made on $1 million. In order to get that $1 million, Joe, somebody said sign on the bottom line, and in signing on the bottom line, I signed off on all the rights for the whole thing in perpetuity.
What's next for you?
I'm doing a lot of painting right now, Joe, and I have an exhibition in Los Angeles coming in the spring. I have a new book which I'm working on when I get back, which I'm keeping under wraps. And I have another screenplay. So, I mean, I like to keep the things balanced off, if I possibly can, movies, painting, writing. But if I have to make my choice, I'm going to stick to writing.
What a way to finish a show. I bet the suspense was just killing you.
We'd like to thank all of the authors for being part of our show.
And I'd like to thank the both of you for coming into the store and sharing llamas with the rest of the world. So the staff and I got you each a little token of our appreciation.
Aww.
I know you just had a birthday, so Holly, this is for you.
Okay, it's a book. It's a book. Great. And appropriately, it's a history of lesbian hair.
Well, you have had a different hairdo with every show.
Okay, guilty.
And Joe, we did not want you to feel left out. So we've gotten this for you, but we think that you should wait until you get home to open it.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you've enjoyed this 1-hour special edition of the Gay News Network.
For information on upcoming events or book signings at Lammas, please give us a call at 1-800-95-LAMMAS. For more information on the Gay News Network, check us out at our homepage at the World Wide Web at members.aol.com/gaynewsnet, and news has a Z.